name is Cassie Finley, and I'm really excited today that we'll be talking about emotional intelligence. This is one of my favorite subjects. Our presenter today is Jeff Morris. He's president of the Mosconi Group, and he's a member of 360's High Performance Leadership faculty. He's also what we call a serial entrepreneur, actually founding his first company way back in 2002. He's a corporate speaker, widely respected for his skills in building internal employee productivity, changing behaviors, and achieving measurable results for organizations. He's currently working on his latest book. It's entitled Story Selling: How to Close More Sales in a World Adverse to Sales. So I'm excited to have Jeff. So Jeff, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Cassie. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see everyone online. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit in this afternoon. We're scheduled for an hour, but we probably won't use all of it. So, feel free along the way to either post questions on the message function of your WebEx, or feel free to jot them down and ask them at the end. Either way, but we'll address them. We'll address all of our questions at the end. But let's take a look at what we're going to be covering today. So we're going to start with a quick definition of what emotional intelligence is. We'll talk about how emotions affect your team's thinking skills in ways that you may never have considered. We'll discover that we'll discuss the psychology of why you and your employees react the way that you do, right? We'll talk about the 4 quadrants of emotional intelligence mastery. Then I'll share a few tips that you can implement immediately to kind of help improve your emotional intelligence. And finally, I'll show you the skills that emotionally intelligent leaders implement to create a sustainable success for their organization. So, what is emotional intelligence? Many consider this a little too touchy-feely to be effective in the world of business. I once struck up a conversation with a guy on a plane. He asked what I did. When I told him how we build internal employee skills and change behaviors, he wanted to know how. So I went through a laundry list for service. When I got to emotional intelligence, he looked at me and said, "Emotional intelligence, isn't that an oxymoron?" And really, that's kind of how the world sees it. Anything emotional is just too touchy-feely for the business world. I tend to disagree, especially these days. Customers have become more evolved and have more access to information and more access to your competition than ever before. So in a multi-channel, multicultural world, the way you treat your customers really has become one of the only true differentiators. Touchy-feely, if you will, is how companies like Southwest Airlines, Starbucks, and Zappos have become so successful. If you're interested in knowing more about the topic, how customer experience can separate you from the competition, by the way, we have a series of webinars on our website, mosconigroup.com, and I'll share that address with you at the end. But so the facts speak for themselves. So, for example, these are there's not a lot of information because emotional intelligence is a relatively new technique. But for example, American Express tested emotional competence training on their financial advisors. And what they found was that trained advisors actually increased business 18.1% compared to 16.2% for the control group. That doesn't seem like a huge difference, but obviously for a company the size of American Express, it actually represents hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? After Motorola, there was a Motorola, they took one of their manufacturing facilities and provided training in emotional intelligence. And 93% of employees had an increase in productivity within that particular facility. They did it as a test. Also, after supervisors in a manufacturing plant received training for one of our clients, received training in emotional competencies, several things happened that we tracked. Lost time accidents reduced 50%. Formal grievances reduced from 15 per year to 3 per year, and the plant actually exceeded productivity goals by $250,000. So just from that particular implementation, just one concept of emotional intelligence, there actually is a return on investment for these types of things. So emotional intelligence refers to how well we handle ourselves and our relationships in 4 domains. Self-awareness, knowing what we're feeling and why we're feeling it. Self-management, the handling of our stressing emotions in such a way that they don't cripple us or get in our way, but using them to learn instead, or marshaling those positive emotions, getting involved and enthused about what we're doing, aligning our actions with passions, right? The third is empathy, knowing what others are feeling. And really the fourth is putting it all together in skilled relationships, right? So we start with the self-awareness, the self-management. We're going to talk about empathy and really putting it all together into these relationships. It's kind of the 4 quadrants of emotional intelligence. So to understand how emotional intelligence affects your employees' actions, let's take a look at the chain of events that every human being implements when we make a decision. We call this the response chain, right? So the first thing that occurs is that key moment, something that triggers us, right? The triggering event or situation that represents a challenge or demands a response from us. This is then filtered through what we call a paradigm. There are 4 paradigms. I'm going to talk about those and explain them in a moment, but there's fear, there's duty, there's achievements, and then there's integrity. Then we come to what we call the moment of choice. And this is what happens in our brain. This is how we put a spin on those key moments, how we make sense of what happened to us just now. The first step our brain does is assign meaning. And remember, this is influenced by both the event and also our particular paradigm filter. We have feelings about what just happened. We experience inside our minds and bodies: anger, hurt, sadness, helplessness, fear, inadequacy. Sometimes it even manifests in physical sensations: shortness of breath, a light feeling in your stomach, muscle tensions, those sorts of things. And then we come to our actual behavior, what it is that we do. And when we do this, we actually choose one of 2 paths usually. We choose to respond by embracing reality, exercising responsibility, clarifying our purpose, and acting with integrity. Or we choose to kind of resist reality. We disown the responsibility. It's someone else's fault. We kind of lack our vision or purpose, and we really act more out of fear. So think about this as an example. Suppose you had an idea for improving your company. You've done your research. You knew it was going to be successful, so you decided to get a commitment to pursue this idea, right? You put together an amazing presentation for an upcoming staff meeting. You have success stories. You have data to support a potential action plan. You're ready. You're excited. You're energized, okay? However, throughout your presentation, your boss never looks at you. He's doodling on a notepad. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't make comments. How do you react? Do you retreat to your office and stew about what you could have done better? Or do you find a sympathetic coworker and criticize your boss for his lack of vision or foresight? And believe me, I've worked for other people in the past, so I've done all of these things. Or do you go to your boss and confront him or her? If you choose that first option, how you interact with your boss will be different from here on out, won't it? You'll be one of those people who, if you're going and finding a sympathetic coworker, you kind of become one of those people that sows discontent in the corporate culture. If you choose the second option, where you actually go and confront your boss, him or her, you might find out the reasons your boss wasn't interested. You then have ammunition to go fine-tune your idea and overcome those obstacles. You may find his or her ideas improve your idea because they identified issues that you really never considered. And along the way, you've exercised responsibility, and by doing so, really clarified your purpose while you were acting with integrity. This really is what we call the pathway to success. But you can see how this decision process played out dozens of times a day for every size or type of situation across the numbers of employees in your organization. Can either create that positive engagement and those successful actions, or down at the bottom, it can really drag your organization down. And many of you are thinking, well, that's just each person's hardwiring, right? They're either a positive person or a negative person, but it's actually about choices. the choices that we make in each situation. And choices can be learned. So these choices can be defined. So just like I try to teach my children how, and possibly more important, why to make good decisions, we can actually also teach ourselves by shifting our framing. Our choices are made based on our framing of every situation that we encounter. We call that framing our paradigm, and I have mentioned these earlier, and we're going to talk about them right now. But you can learn to filter your perceptions through a different paradigm. That's why emotional intelligence training has become so vital to companies who want to improve their internal and employee productivity, as well as the external ways that your customers choose to do business with you. It ends up affecting the entire company. So let's talk about those paradigms. The first is fear. This is where we feel powerless and out of control. We don't like what's happening, and yet we feel unable to affect change. Because of this, we expend a great amount of energy dealing with the stresses of life. Our life is really dominated with the I have to or I'm afraid not to kind of thought behaviors and negative feelings like fear or anger or inadequacy. We only see the worst in others. So we start to resort to things like manipulation to get what we want and strive for an immediate gratification. And we're reactive. We blame others and really seek escape. Life kind of feels like a hassle overall. So that's kind of the fear paradigm. And by the way, as I go through these paradigms, all of us at one time or another have lived within each of these paradigms. It kind of depends on the job that we had, the state that we were in at the time, where we were in our lives. In fact, I've actually probably moved through these paradigms, starting with fear and moving through the remainders that we're gonna talk about. So the second is duty. This is the duty paradigm. We have control, or we exercise control over our lives by conforming to what others expect of us, right? We're good and honorable people. We build security. We submit to the rules, and we avoid problems with others. This is the paradigm where most of us spend the majority of our lives. We seek acceptance, and by going along with the way that things are supposed to be, we're steady and dependable and strictly honest. All excellent traits. However, I believe we all spend so much time living with this paradigm because it's how society used to traditionally define our path to success. In many of our parents' day, right? I'm maybe quite a bit older than some of you on the line, but you work hard for the same company and you'll eventually be able to retire. My dad, for example, worked for years with the same company. He was a hard worker. He did what he was supposed to do, but he never really enjoyed what he did. Probably why I couldn't wait to retire. So, but since the duty paradigm relies on the approval of others, we often unconsciously subordinate our personal needs and self-expression to what we think that others expect from us. So that's the second paradigm. The third paradigm, I think all of us can recognize, because this is one that in the business world is very common. We seek importance and meaning through our achievements. We project a confident and together image to others. It's all about our image. We're innately motivated to pursue and achieve success, and we're not satisfied with merely complying with the ordinary things that life has to offer. For many of us, this is really a focus on wealth or power or status. So this paradigm is characterized by discipline and hard work and goals overall. And it's less influenced by the needs of others, right? This is how most people define the path of success today. Unfortunately, no matter how much we accomplish, the job is never done. By the way, this is the path I found myself on through the last decade of my life. As Cassie said, I'm technically a serial entrepreneur, but a lot of that was driven by this particular paradigm. But because of that, my perception was that others could never, ever meet my high expectations. I found myself really doing everything because no one else could do it to the level I could, or so I thought. But this, as I discovered, was entirely untrue as I became more sophisticated in my business practices. So finally, there's the integrity paradigm. This is not to say that all of these paradigms or filters don't have integrity. It's just simply a way of defining it. So when we act from integrity, we are free, we're alive, we're happy. We unconditionally accept what is and recognize numerous choices about how to respond to the events and the circumstances of life as they approach us. We believe in ourselves and care about others at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. We develop a strong moral compass, and we have the resiliency, if you will, to overcome the challenges that we face. We subordinate our immediate gratification, like the fear paradigm, our desire to please others, like the duty paradigm, and our determination to accumulate and accomplish, like the achievement paradigm. So we subordinate those things, and we take responsibility for our actions. We kind of conquer the pain and the defeats of the past, which can often be difficult. It's kind of hard to let go of those things. And we don't believe or try to control everything around us. We don't abandon the lessons we learned as we move through these other paradigms. We simply just don't use them to define our happiness. When issues come up, we deal with them openly and without manipulation. We want to win, but we want everyone around us to win as well. So let's just take a moment to see if we can identify the types of responses in real-life situations. So for the purposes of this, I'm going to use a real-life experience we just recently saw in a new customer, okay? So just kind of think through how you might answer each of these as I go through them. So let's say that you're feeling deflated because your boss has just told you he doesn't like you empowering your employees. He feels like you've given him too much responsibility. He's paying you, not them, to make decisions. He insists that you stop this practice immediately. So what is the fear response? What is the duty response? What is the achievement response to this moment, this key moment that just happened to us? Our boss has just had this conversation with us. And then what is the integrity response? So, you know, the fear response, and there's no right or wrong answer to this, but the fear response could be that you apologize, right? You're motivated by self-protection, self-preservation, and you're powerless to make change. So your decision might be to do exactly what the boss insisted on. Apologize and stop the activity because you have to, right? The duty response is based on not rocking the boat. We're looking for approval from others, including our boss and our coworkers, right? So your decision might be to simply stop empowering to please your boss, but pick up the work slack for your employees so that they like you. You end up sacrificing your weekends and evenings to make everyone happy out of a sense of duty. And I've seen this actually played out more times than I care to admit in my own companies. So the achievement response. So this decision is ego-based. So you have to look good to achieve, right? Instead of empowering, you simply shift so that you're creating the to-do list and telling others what you need them to do, rather than empowering them to create their own goals and path to success. You look good, but your employees aren't satisfied or engaged. Eventually, this could become a formula for failure. So what ends up happening is that with the achievement paradigm is that you start to see success. You see success on a very short-term, limited basis. But a lot of other types of factors start to creep in. You know, employees become disengaged, they begin to leave, the cost of hiring and onboarding goes up, and the cost of morale becomes very high. So sometimes achievement can achieve those things that you need in the short term, but it's not a sustainable practice. The integrity response is different. It's focused on success for everyone, right? That's kind of the key basis behind it. Success for everyone, me, my boss, and my employees. So, for example, you might put together a case for your boss on how empowering has created more efficiencies and success within your group, and how that success leads to meeting or exceeding the company objectives. You connect the dots for him or her, your boss. You don't take credit for these successes. Instead, you give credit to your team, because without all of you pulling together, this wouldn't happen. And so, you know, there are different approaches, and again, there's no right or wrong answer here, but you can see that it's based on, integrity is based on everyone winning. So you can see some of them have negative impact, some of them have short-term positive impact. So by shifting our filter to the integrity paradigm, we really become more focused on creating a sustainable success, not just short-lived. So maybe you can begin to see how emotional intelligence becomes one of those key factors in creating an engaged, energized, empowered, successful organization. Change of actions really requires a change of thinking first. So whether you currently manage people or you want to advance your career, emotional intelligence really begins with you. It's what makes the difference between top performing leaders and the rest. Recent research has found that high emotional intelligence is a bigger predictor of success in executive roles than IQ. And you can go out on the internet and just Google EQ versus IQ, and you'll see all kinds of information and data around that. For organizations, emotional intelligent leadership creates big measurable differences in three key crucial areas: employee retention, productivity, and overall customer experience. So we leverage the four-quadrant, it's called the four-quadrant model of emotional intelligence. It focuses on personal competence before moving to social competence. For example, we have monthly mastermind groups, and this allows individuals to join a group of like-minded business peers to learn and practice many of the leadership techniques like emotional intelligence that are out there. In our emotional intelligence workshops, we start with a self-awareness of your ability to accurately perceive your own emotions in the moment and understand your tendencies across situations. Then we move to self-management in that lower left-hand quadrant, your ability to use your awareness of emotions to stay flexible and direct your behavior positively. Once our mastermind group members have kind of mastered the personal side, then we train in social competence. The social awareness to accurately pick up on emotions in other people and understand what's really going on with them. And finally, relationship management. This is what we talked about, bringing it all together. Strengthening your ability to use your awareness of your own emotions and the emotions of others to manage interactions successfully. And this can be, when I say manage interactions successfully, it can be everything from, convincing your boss that you need a raise or more vacation time to negotiating large contracts or even engaging your team to be more successful. In our monthly mastermind meetings, the group assigns participants, we assign participants a specific exercise, such as becoming a better listener, that he or she must practice, that everyone practices during the following month. The following meeting, participants share the highs and lows of their experiences. For example, one of our participants talked about how turning his desk against the wall removed the physical barrier between him and other employees when they walked into his office. So he noticed that his employees started to visit him more consistently. Some of you may not like that, you may not want that, but what it does is it creates a more engaged teamwork type of situation. So this, all of this is great, but what does it mean what does it mean to our bottom line? It's paid immediate dividends for many of our mastermind group clients. For example, one member of our leadership mastermind group recently had to fire a senior employee. And what happens is that, usually what happens is that then invokes fear among employees. They start to chatter and they start to talk, and it's never positive things that they're talking about, so they might lose their job or those kinds of things. But in this particular situation, because he had implemented a lot of the things that we had put together here, rather than invoking fear among his employees, it actually created a sense of relief. It was almost like, wow, why did it take you so long to get rid of that guy? Employees were more engaged, morale was higher. Employees who used to avoid this manager actually now arrived at the office earlier. One marketing employee was suddenly free to manage the expectations of her sales team. She was in marketing and worked better with her sales team without the obstacle of this manager in the way, and it started to create more efficiencies. So rather than spell doom or gloom, really the emotional climate was such that they adapted to the positive outcomes rather than become mired in the negativity a firing usually created. On their own, all of these are challenging to achieve, just any one of those. types of things, like marketing, working more closely with sales, for example. In fact, it's what many times causes leaders to give up. Trying to accomplish things by yourself like this and hoping for immediate results just becomes a frustrating practice. So that's why, the mastermind groups that we form really help you learn with your peers, so you can put the learning to practical use on a daily basis and share the ups and downs with these peers, right? It also helps you kind of overcome the two hurdles of implementing learning as adults: practice and accountability. You're practicing it, and even if that learning is for something as complex as emotional intelligence, you're practicing, but you have a group of people who are kind of holding your feet to the fire and checking on you each month to make sure that you're achieving the goals that you set for yourself. And you can start seeing results fairly quickly. So maybe you're not ready to join one of our mastermind groups. There are some strategies you can implement. I'll give you some right now to help improve your emotional intelligence. There's just kind of these are just some sample tactics of the many that we share in the live groups that we have. So the first step really is commitment. To change your rate of success or the success of your teams within your company, you have to change intent. Is your intent to protect yourself or enter that protection mode, or is your intent to grow and succeed? So let's start with the internally in ourselves. One tactic our mastermind groups implement is reducing stress in the moment. Okay, so something's just happened, your stress levels rise, and really what happens, physiologically, high levels of stress really can overcome our body and our mind also, but kind of getting in our way of the ability to accurately read a situation or hear what someone else is saying. So you need to kind of become aware of those feelings and needs and communicate clearly, and stress really drives that down. So being able to quickly calm yourself down and relieve stress helps you stay balanced. Kind of creates a focus and helps you stay in control, if you will, no matter what challenges you face or how stressful a situation becomes. So you can develop your own stress-busting skills by working through our 3 steps. You have to realize when you're stressed. Sometimes we don't even realize it. I think it kind of overcomes us. But that's the first step, and is recognizing what stress feels like. What is it your body? What happens to your body? Are your muscles or stomach tightening, or are they sore? Are your hands clenched? Is your breath shallow? Being aware of your physical response to stress can really help regulate tension when it occurs. Identify. So once we know what stress is, everybody reacts differently to stress. If you tend to become angry or agitated under stress, you'll respond best to stress relieving activities that quiet you down. So what is your stress response? We have to identify our stress response. If you tend to become depressed or withdrawn, you'll respond best to stress relieving activities or stimulating. If you tend to freeze, speeding up in some ways while slowing down in others, you need stress relieving activities to provide comfort, stimulation, if you will. And then the third part of this is discover the stress busting technique that works for you. It's different for everyone. It kind of depends on how you react and how your body is reacting. The best way to reduce stress quickly is by engaging one or more of your senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Each person responds different to sensory input, so you need to find things that are soothing or energizing for you. For example, if you're a visual person, you might relieve stress by surrounding yourself with uplifting images. Or if you respond more to sound, you may find a wind chime or a favorite piece of music or the sound of water fountain, those types of things. For me, comedy is a huge stress reliever for me. So I'll go watch some YouTube videos that just crack me up or something like that just kind of helps take me out of my head and gives me that break. So another thing that we do is this is just another tactic, is we discuss techniques on communication. For example, one of the techniques we practice is nonverbal communication. Being a good communicator really requires more than just verbal skills and the ability to manage stress. Often what you say is less important than how you say it, and I think we all kind of recognize that. But these kind of nonverbal signals that we send out, the gestures that we make, the way that you sit, you know, how fast or how loud you talk, how close you stand, or how much eye contact you make. You know, I know that when my kids are lying to me that there's no eye contact. they're just they're blatantly obvious about it. So you also need to be able to accurately read and respond to those nonverbal cues that other people send you. So these messages don't stop when someone stops speaking, by the way. So even when you're silent, you're still communicating nonverbally. So think about what you're transmitting as well, and if what you say matches what you feel. So if you insist I'm fine while clenching your teeth and looking away, your body is clearly signaling the opposite. Your nonverbal messages can produce a sense of interest or trust, excitement, desire for connection, or they can generate fear or confusion, distrust, or disinterest. Successful nonverbal communication really depends on your ability to manage stress, recognize your own emotions, and understand those signals that you're sending and receiving when communicating. So here's some thoughts. Focus on the other person. If you're planning what you're going to say next, or daydreaming, or thinking about what your to-do list, the things that you have to achieve, you're almost certainly going to miss nonverbal cues and those kind of subtleties in conversation. This is one of the things that we encourage a lot of our clients to avoid, especially when it comes to kind of hot topics, is avoid email. Email is terrible because there are a lot of cues that you just do not get, that you would get if you're talking to someone face to face. So if it's something that is important or volatile in your organization, avoid email. Do a face-to-face meeting. Maintain eye contact. Eye contact communicates interest, it maintains the flow of the conversation, and it helps gauge other people's responses. And, overall, just pay attention to nonverbal cues that you're sending and also receiving. Facial expressions, tone of voice, postures, gestures, touch, and the timing and pace of the conversation, really. So there's a lot of types of things that you can do to address these. So let's look at a third one. Here's another one. This is resolving conflict. And actually next month our 360 HPL webinar is on resolving conflict. So please join us on that. But what if conflict arises? It does, right? It will invariably rise at some point. So we work on, in the mastermind groups, we work on skills to resolve conflict positively. There's a lot of different things that can happen. These disagreements are inevitable in any relationship. Two people can't possibly have the same needs, opinions, expectations all the time. But it doesn't need to be a bad thing. Resolving conflict in a healthy, constructive way can actually strengthen trust between people. When conflict isn't perceived as threatening or punishing, it fosters freedom and creativity and safety in relationships. The ability to manage conflict in a positive, trust-building way is supported by many of the other skills you'll learn in emotional intelligence training. But once you know how to manage stress, kind of stay emotionally present and aware, communicate non-verbally, you'll be better equipped to handle emotionally charged situations and catch and diffuse many of those issues before they escalate. But if conflict does arise, here's some thoughts. Stay focused in the present. When you're not holding on to the old hurts and those resentments, and you can recognize the reality of the current situation and view it as a new opportunity for resolving old feelings about conflicts, right? Choose your battles, choose your arguments. They take time and energy, and especially if you want them to resolve in a positive way, consider what's worth arguing about and what's not. Forgive. Other people's hurtful behaviors in the past, or got to let go of it. To resolve conflict, you have to give up the urge to punish or seek revenge. My wife has a memory that's very long when it comes to the things that I've done wrong. And so that tends to rise occasionally. And then in conflicts that can't be resolved, right? It takes two people to keep an argument going. If you choose to disengage from a conflict, even if you still disagree, if you choose to go, okay, I think we'll just, agree to disagree. Let's walk away from this. If you let go of that, that can actually go a long way to resolving conflict and building that trust. So once you commit to a new intent, then become self-aware, you'll begin to naturally kind of take on the attributes of an emotionally intelligent leader. There's a lot of different tactics that you can implement, but ultimately there are certain characteristics that you can see in what we would call an emotionally intelligent leader. The first is that they're non-defensive and they're open. Insecure leaders that demonstrate low emotional intelligence become defensive, and they take everything personally, right? Whenever they encounter anything that appears to them as a criticism or a challenge to their authority, they take that personally. A secure leader with a healthy dose of emotional intelligence really strives to listen, understand, and find out what's behind the behaviors and actions of those those people that they're responsible for managing. These leaders listen before they respond, and if they don't understand something, they ask open-ended questions. Not yes or no questions, but open-ended. They're meant to gather more information, not just from the words that are coming out of their mouth, but also the nonverbal types of communications that are happening. Excuse me. As opposed to leaders with this kind of low emotional intelligence, the high emotional intelligent leaders, they don't make it about them. They look for ways to make the situation better for everyone involved. The second thing is that they're aware of their own emotions. Leaders who are oblivious to their own emotions and how they're impacted by them really have no awareness of how their words and actions affect others. This can be very devastating, have a devastating effect on staff morale and really lower productivity overall. Highly emotionally intelligent leaders are aware of strong emotions and avoid speaking out of anger and frustration. If they feel the urge to give in to strong emotions in their interactions and with others, they really give themselves a timeout and they go relieve that stress. Excuse me. For me, it's watching the funny videos, but they wait until their emotions have leveled off and they have a chance to think about the situation. They're adept at picking up the emotional state of others. A skilled and empathetic leader that's aware of others' emotions is really able to use that awareness and develop stronger relationships with those folks that they manage. Even if they're delivering bad news, they're able to cushion the impact by simply letting the receiver know that they're aware of how they might be feeling. Leaders with high EI are able to put themselves in place of the person receiving criticism or negative feedback. They're able to step into their shoes. And it kind of allows them to give it in a way that can be more beneficial and less destructive. And they're available to those reporting to them. If you've ever seen the movie Office Space, yes, they're available to all employees, even this guy. Good leaders make themselves available to those who are reporting to them both physically and emotionally. They're responsive to the fact that there will be times that those reporting to them will have those people reporting to them will have difficulties outside of work that could impact them. Death of family members, friends, relationship breakdowns, all sorts of life crises, excuse me, will affect virtually everyone at work at times. Emotionally open and secure leaders understand and are there to support during these times. And emotionally intelligent leaders are able to check their ego and allow others to shine. So while they possess high self-confidence, these EI leaders do not have a need to demonstrate their own importance or value. They choose their words carefully and speak out of an act of concern for their staff, the health of the organization. They really don't have a need to have their ego massaged. They're not looking for ways to take credit for the work of others. Understanding that people work better when they feel appreciated, they're always looking for ways to show and give positive feedback and rewards for a job well done. They're secure in their own abilities. They're not threatened by those under them, and they actively seek to really help their employees work to the best of their capabilities and rise up in the organization. One of my early mentors gave me a piece of advice that I still use to this day, which is always hire people who are smarter than you. And that's something that has led to success overall for me. So that's what I have for you today. If you have any questions, you can ask them now, or you can email them to me later. Please visit our site at mosconigroup.com or the 360 HPL sites, and watch for our other webinars, download our white papers on many of these same topics. So are there any questions right now?
Well, thanks, Jeff. We do have quite a few questions. Let me start with the first one. You've mentioned this whole concept of mastermind groups. How does that exactly work?
Okay, so these groups are made up of leaders or prospective leaders, people who want to learn, how to further their career. And the way the learning is done is it's done by sharing experience with your peers. So, when we try to learn something new as adults, the learning really fails because we don't use it in practice. We go, I don't know, I've been to dozens of seminars where I think, oh, that's a great idea, and then I walk away and I don't do anything with it. And I'm sure you have too. We don't have really anyone holding our feet to the fire. There's no accountability for what we're doing. So the mastermind groups actually give you several people, excuse me, who are there to share ideas, bounce ideas off of, share successes, hold you accountable month to month. So you learn the principles as a group, then you practice it together. It's really kind of a relatively low cost. So it's great if you have a couple people excuse me, that you want to groom for leadership, or you simply want to learn how to become a better leader to further your own career. Many have kind of described this as, we've actually heard several people describe this as better than their MBA classes, because you learn based on real life experiences and situations rather than from a textbook.
Right. And I know just being involved in mastermind groups and surrounding yourself, the saying again is that you're the average of the 7 people you spend the most time with. And so it's always, it's good in these mastermind groups, you really to find people smarter than you are, as your mentor suggested, and learn from each other from different industries, different skills, different perspectives.
Right. And we actually keep our mastermind groups to 7 or 8 people specifically for that reason.
Great. Well, let me ask another question. Where does the general mood come into play in regards to the 4 quadrants that you mentioned?
The general mood?
Yeah. So Doug has asked this question, general mood in regards to attitude, in regards to, just people's emotions, if you will, their mood, in regards to how does that play into those 4 quadrants that you addressed?
I don't think I'm understanding the question. Are you talking about the kind of the organizational mood, the culture?
I think I'm just reading Doug's question, and I think what he's referencing is just your general as an individual, as a person. And we have good moods and we have bad moods. Doug, correct me if I'm wrong about this, if that's what you're asking. And how does that influence or impact the 4 different quadrants that you addressed?
So there's a variety of ways that it can impact it, but obviously when the cultural mood, I'll just call it the organizational mood is negative, then it tends to drive those kind of self-awareness and self-management types of things as well. And if you are a leader, so for example, if I work in a culture that has kind of this negative or downbeat type of cultural, it actually influences the way that I manage my own stress, that I manage my own types of emotions and experiences, and the way I play those out, because I start to play them out in ways that mirror everyone else, right?
Right.
And what you tend to see is you start to see people slip back through the paradigms, back into almost the fear paradigm, if you will, if it gets too bad. And then the opposite side of that is if I am a leader and I have my mood can drive an entire team, or it can drive an entire organization if it's a smaller company. So the way that I handle my stress and the way that I handle my emotions and how those play out tend to be the model for the rest of the organization, and how others, tend to follow along. Now, I can tell you that in my first company that I had, that became an issue where we put into play a higher emotional intelligence and started to try to change the culture, and we had people who just refused to change. And it was a hard realization for me, because it came down to the idea that there are just people out there that are hardwired. They are hardwired to be negative, and there's no other alternative for them. And in those types of situations, you may find a better place for them.
Well, and probably, in following up, there was a question here about, what if my boss is a fear or duty or achievement kind of guy? How do I create that change in regards to them being hardwired, if you will,
right,
predisposition?
That's a tough one. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of real-life data out there to help. Like, you can't put together a bunch of case studies to demonstrate the value of emotional intelligence. We saw a couple examples in the presentation, but even those, I've seen people go, that's American Express, that's Motorola, they're big companies. But the manufacturing client is our client, and those results we've seen firsthand. But remember, the process really can't begin without that commitment to shift paradigms, to shift from an achievement paradigm to an integrity paradigm, or from a duty paradigm to an integrity paradigm. It's really a personal decision. If you're comfortable talking to your boss about it, you can say, hey, I watched this interesting webinar. Would you like to watch the video? And email me, and I'll send you a link to the video to forward to your boss. Or if it's easier, feel free to email me your company and name your boss. I'll add them to our mailing list. And hopefully they'll kind of begin to see the value of change as they start to see the communications that we're putting out there. They'll never know, by the way, that we received the name from you. But if they begin to adopt the practices, maybe you'll get to kind of feel like the result was an integrity approach on your own part, and everybody wins.
Okay, let's change directions. We have another question. Are there any creative ways you would suggest to identify for emotional intelligence during the interview process before you actually hire someone?
We actually have an entire hiring process, and there are a lot of great questions out there. But one of my favorite things to do is to once you've kind of established these emotionally intelligent types of practices within your organization, we actually will ask them. We'll go, okay, here are our values. Here are the things that we live by, and I want you to pick one of those things and tell me a time when you did something like this. So in other words, one of our values is that we strive to make life as easy as possible for all of our clients. So there's no, oh my gosh, I got to go deal with this kind of thing. Tell me a story about a time that happened, and tell me the people who were involved and how you were able to resolve that. And by kind of listening to their story and seeing how they approached it, you can start to feel whether they have a tendency to be an achievement person or a duty person or even a fear person, although that manifests itself in a lot of other areas. But that's actually one of our favorite. In fact, with our recruiting, when we recruit people, we actually tell them on our website, don't send us a resume, don't send us a cover letter, pick one of the company values from above and tell us the story. And we have them write a little, 1 or 2 paragraph essay, and that's how they start their engagement process with us. Because
wow.
that story tells us a lot.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach to find out who that individual is and how they're driven emotionally.
Right.
Well, here's another question for you. What if you have a team that responds more effectively to the achievement leadership? Do they need to be told what to do, and how do you manage that?
Okay. So, and I kind of talked a little bit about this, but really the only time we've seen the achievement paradigm work successfully is in the short term, or with employees who are fear-based. They tend to tell me what to do because I don't want to do it wrong. This really, what it does is it creates short-term results. I mean, you do see results, If you get there and you go, okay, here are the things that we need to achieve, and you need to do this, and you need to be here, and you need to do this, you do start to see results. But what happens is that they're short-term results. And then what ends up happening is that in these environments, we have seen a high level of turnover. People leave, or they have to be replaced, or they're worse yet, they're not replaced, and the other employees kind of have to pick up the slack, leading to yet more turnover, right? Because the stress becomes too much. Even those duty-based employees, no matter how much duty they feel, they will eventually begin to look for a job that fulfills their duty to themselves and their family. Because just because they're duty-based doesn't mean it's just duty-based to your organization. So they'll begin to they may be able to withstand it a little bit longer, but eventually they'll look for a place where they can become a happier person. So really, the cost of turnover, recruiting, onboarding starts to eat at your profitability. The integrity model tends to yield more sustainable long-term results.
Great, that makes perfect sense. Let me end with one last question, and this is from Amy, and she wants to know, how do we join a mastermind group? We're back to that.
So it depends on where you're located. 360 HPL is across the country, so we are located, Mosconi Group is located in St. Louis, but we have partners across the country and around the world. So we would love to have you join one of our groups. We have a couple spots open currently, and or if you want to go to 360hpl.com, you can take a look at our other partners that are out there.
Yeah, and then you just find one that's close to you. Or there are virtual groups that are being formed, Amy, at this time. Yep. So that might be something you would want to look at, too, depending on who's in the group and how you could best benefit and contribute to that mastermind group.
Yeah, and we're actually in the process of implementing that as well, a virtual group. And so how the virtual groups will work, you'll be able to log in to a WebEx, and you will need a webcam because of the nonverbal communication, right? You don't get it as much through a computer, but you see the whole chain of folks at the top of the screen, everybody's faces, and we go through our learning, and then we go through our experience sharing.
Perfect. Well, I know with technology, anything is possible, and we can learn from brilliant people all around the world. So I want to thank our participants for joining us today, and Jeff, I want to thank you specifically for leading us on this journey through emotional intelligence and how we can impact positive change in the world. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and also, just one last reminder, join us for the next 360 HPL webinar, which is on resolving conflict. We had mentioned that. It's October 22nd at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can find details at 360hpl.com.
Yep, and Bob Foley will be our presenter for that particular resolving conflict. I know you addressed resolving conflict just briefly as it links to emotional intelligence. So all of the pieces just continue to fit together for us as we continue to develop as leaders. Again, thank you very much, and enjoy your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.